Yep.
Yeah. Are there still people in there, or are you the last one? Okay, all right. Stragglers.
I'm not sure. All right. I'll say that.
All right. Hello? Val, are you good? Do you need a moment? All right. I shall unmute the ceiling mic. All right. Is the sound still working okay? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm glad that you could make it out on this illustrious 420 and this time of student finals. But we're always really happy to actually see the Nice Moves community in person. I'm Natalia Potiakin, if you don't already know who I am. I'm the vice president of Nice Moves, and I'm also chair of the events committee. We put these on every month, so please, keep an eye on our next announcement, and hopefully the topics cycle enough that you can find one you're interested in. In terms of upcoming Nice Moves announcements, I think we're pretty much good. We don't have anything too major coming up. But I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today, Hanna Loegering. She's going to be talking about, did I mess it up already? Oh, okay. You'll reintroduce yourself and fix it. She'll be talking about her process working on independent projects in Blender, how she creates her style of stylized animation, what it's like being a freelancer and running her business Fractal Orange. And I'm really excited that she came here all the way from Fargo to talk to us. So please give a round of applause.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. As Natalia said, my name is Hanna Loegering. You're so close. It's okay. Yeah, I'll be talking a little bit how I made this project here. I made this as part of a contest, moving meditations contest for Clinton Jones's big montage he puts together. I really love integrating personal projects and contests together because A, it gives me a deadline. I can't be too ambitious or too under ambitious. And it gives me a prompt I can follow, and then I can be creative around that. And I just find that such a good vehicle for learning because you have a goal in mind. So I'll just play it to get started here, and then I'll proceed to talk more about it. Let me just. Can we get the audio a little louder? But that's okay. Oh.
Is that better or louder? Okay.
Yeah, so that's my animation. Yeah, so this was made, like I said, for the contest. We had to follow this basic template here, have our character in the middle, keep the camera movement the same, and then just throw whatever creativeness at it that we could.
Who was the contest with again?
Yeah, so this is Clinton Jones's 3D render challenge. He does one every 6 months, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
He also does like a major and a minor one, so they like kind of.
Yeah, like these contests are huge. And I think for this one, they had 3,600 participants.
Oh,
And for the most recent one, they had 4,000 some, I think it was. It's just incredible. The amount of creativity and technical skill set you see from these renders is just amazing. And hopping on the Discord, you can see people's processes, ask for feedback. I love working on contests like this.
Too, there's no boundary for entry.
Yeah, you can use whatever software. They provide the template files for you. It's just awesome. So going into this, I knew that I really wanted to spend a lot of time on pre-production because it's so easy for me to just jump right into the software and just start throwing things at the wall. But okay, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to gather reference. So actually, I have my PureRef board here. If you don't know what PureRef is, it is awesome. It's free and you can float it above every window, but oops, wrong shortcut key. So this is my PureRef board. A lot of these images are just from Google or from ArtStation, but I first knew that I wanted to have something very bright and colorful. I'm just naturally drawn toward those more cartoony aesthetics. So I was looking for color palettes, specifically with these images here. Love the bright colors. And specifically, I really liked this image by Sylvain Sirale. I hope I pronounced that right. Probably, yeah. But I just love the blues and the reds. And so I ended up just sampling colors directly from this image to use in my piece. And then next, I thought, okay, I want some sort of farm and bunnies. I was inspired by my roommate telling a story of how these bunnies were mowing down our garden in the backyard. But I'm like, oh, but bunnies, they're so cute and adorable. How can they be so vicious? So I went that route of what would I do if I somehow knew Tai Chi? How would I handle bunnies? So I'm gonna have this farm, but since I'm leaning more into a stylized approach, let's go more sci-fi fantasy a little bit. It doesn't have to be ultra realistic. So I love Star Wars, so I naturally pulled from Star Wars things. I really liked the round architecture, the little notches in the roof. This image inspired me to add a wind turbine into the background. Can you see my cursor? Yes, you can. Awesome. But out of all the images, I really liked this one here by Yuvraj Jha. This one specifically, I pulled inspiration from these outlines that are around everything. I went, oh, that's such a good idea. I'm going to add outlines to my work. And I really like this flare, and especially how the flare goes over the outlines. I think it just adds a little bit more depth to the image. So I wanted to incorporate that. And moving on to more references, I thought, okay, I want to be more stylized. I think I'm going to start experimenting with NPR styles. So non-photo real stylized. And I immediately thought, oh my goodness, I love Arcane. I want to make something Arcane-like. It was like, oh, it's so awesome. So I did some tests where I was painting my own textures and quickly realized, no, I cannot do this. This is a little bit much. I think I'm going to have to go and make more procedural textures and do something. I ended up doing something more like this style here with these strokes, but incorporating those lovely, lovely outlines from this image here. This was around the time when I got access to DALL-E 2, right when AI was just exploding into the world. So I thought I might as well just type in a few prompts to see what DALL-E 2 thinks of my idea. And these bunnies here, since I wasn't going for super realistic bunnies, I typed in, okay, make me a white bunny with blue polka dots and a squirrel's tail. And it always gave me a blue bunny with white polka dots. I don't know what it was thinking, and I was kind of mad at it, but kind of happy that it didn't get it. AI is kind of scary. But I actually, in my color tests, realized actually a blue bunny with white polka dots does look better. What does the AI know that I don't? Yeah. But I only used AI in this process for ideation in the very beginning, just spitballing ideas. Let's move on. And feel free at any time to stop and ask questions or ask for clarification. I would love to do that. Then I moved on to sketches. And in my opinion, every great idea always starts with stickmen. I won't spend too much time on these, but just trying out a whole bunch of different things. I like to print off little templates with the correct aspect ratio and draw within those. This was a technique that I learned on this project, which I wish I had thought of it sooner. Maybe some of you do this already, but I have her character, but I didn't know what type of clothing she was going to wear. So I wanted to make a whole bunch of different styles of clothing. So I took a T-pose, rendered it out, copy and paste it a whole bunch of times. So then I could draw over it and not worry about messing up her proportions and easily compare. I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. It just makes ideating so much easier when you have a template. I liked it so much that I actually used this technique on a later project where I purchased a 3D model of a boat and wanted to add fishy aspects to it. And I didn't have to worry about proportions, and I could easily compare different ideas. I have no idea what the y equals negative 0.4452 plus 100. I don't know what that is.
Knock out some algebra while you're at it.
Yeah, apparently it was important enough to write down.
Very precise.
Modeling. I think I was moving something along the y-axis, but I don't know. These were sketches for the house. And since, like I said, I wanted to spend more time in pre-production, really thinking of the story. Why is this woman guarding her carrots so much? Why does she not like the bunnies? What does she do with the carrots? Well, maybe she's like me. Maybe she has her own business and she sells her carrots, makes carrot pies, carrot cakes, carrot things, and sells them out the back of her house. So I gave her a little stall here to sell carrots, but I still wanted it to be homely, and so she has flowers because she also lives there and she's nice. One design thing that I really liked is the bell shape of this roof. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's the same bell shape I actually used for her hat. I thought it was a good way to tie them together. The house belongs to her and she belongs to the house. Just trying to keep shape language consistent. Yeah. Oh, there's the template. I also did a couple sketches in Photoshop. These were mostly testing the landscape, how I wanted it to bend. Yeah, not much to that. Blocking. Now we're finally in Blender. Now we're in Blender. Yeah, she's kind of scary right now. But just blocking out the scene, building things out. I don't really have too much to say about this other than just arranging things because I had already figured out more or less how I wanted it to look through all the sketches.
Did you model the character yourself?
I did not model the character. The character is actually the free rain rig from the Blender Foundation. But I did edit her face, like I made her a little bit folder, sunk her chin or cheeks down a little bit just so she looked a little older. And I made all the clothes. But the rig itself, I did not.
That is a test alarm. That one happened at 1:45. One's supposed to happen now. There's no tornado.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. Oh my goodness. All right, color study. So like I said before, these swatches are directly sampled from that reference image I gathered. And you can see here, there I have the white bunnies with the blue polka dots. It looks okay in this image, but as I went on and I actually started painting over or under my renders, I realized the blue actually seemed to work better. And I also realized a new technique that I haven't used before, and that is having my 3D render. I'm in Photoshop now. Having my 3D render and then setting the blend mode of this layer to pass through. And then you can easily paint underneath it and quickly swap out colors. There they are white. And there they are blue. But lots of colors changed. Her outfit changed colors multiple times. The sky changed. Like it didn't even end up blue in the final. So we don't need that open anymore. Tried purple. That is ugly. It did not go with that. But this ended up being the final coloration. And I will say I specifically rendered out different crypto mats for her apron because I was going back and forth so many times just so I could recolor it in post. That's so handy. Outlines. Now this is probably my favorite part about the talk. Outlines, adding outlines. how was I going to add outlines? Well, if you've used Blender before, the first thing you probably think of is either grease pencil or freestyle. I will not be going over grease pencil because I do not know grease pencil, even though it is super powerful and I really want to learn it. I think I did this project 6 months ago. So even between those last 6 months, grease pencil has already improved and changed so much from this project anyway. But freestyle is also a very powerful tool. However, let's see, let me render out real quick. I am in Eevee. Freestyle is a post-process effect. So it'll render the image and then it'll add the black lines on top of it. I don't know if you saw the lines pop in real quick there. Mm-hmm. So the issue with that is you cannot see the outlines while you're working in the viewport, which can be very frustrating. Although freestyle does give you a lot of options for customization, I knew I didn't want to use it because I couldn't see it in viewport. So there is a way around that. If I select Suzanne here and zoom in, right now all it has is a subdivision surface modifier on it. But if I add a solidify modifier, what solidify does is just, yeah, it adds thickness to the walls of geometry. So let's blow it up just a little bit. You need to flip the normals. And then we don't want our outlines to be orange. We want them to be black. So right now our material slot is set to index of 0. So it's referencing the orange material. We need to index 1. So it references the second index value. Go into my materials, add a new material. I already made this black outline material. Boom, we have outlines. Now, important to note, this only works in Eevee, and you have to make sure this backface calling checkbox is selected. Otherwise, you just get a black blob. But now we can fine tune this thickness a little bit, bring it in so it actually looks nice. And then we have Suzanne with lovely outlines. Let's make it a little thicker there. You can see how it reacts with the viewport. And now since this is geometry, we can easily go in and edit things like, oh, it's clipping through the floor. Let's raise that up. Easily make edits like that. But I didn't use this method either. I just thought it was neat and wanted to show you.
Also, if you do this way, you can use weight painting to adjust the thicknesses and
Yes. With your vertex group here, you can weight paint, add different weights to vertices, and then, like you said, make things thicker or thinner. One important note, as I was making this, if you use this method on an object like this one with a Boolean, it will crash. So apply your Boolean first. Before I go into more methods about outlines, I got so excited about that. I should really talk about this macaroni noodle here. This has that lovely brushstroke texture that I used. Let's jump to the camera here. For all my assets. If I were to open up the original file of the bunny project, my laptop would cry. So I made a much smaller file to share with you. Let's go into, switch gears here to the shader editor. Now, if you don't know 3D or nodes, I will try to keep this simple, but I think this is worth going into. I used a shader purchased from Alan Wyatt. He has this lovely brushstroke texture. I'm sure you can get similar ones elsewhere for other programs as well. It's very good, and he's since updated it since I used it on this project. But I'm a little confused onto how it works. But basically, there's an input node and an output node. And it seems semi-procedural in that we have lots of sliders here to change the stroke scale, blend the strokes together, variation, and of course, a lovely seed value. I say semi-procedural because you need these image nodes to work. So if I just isolate this one, you need image nodes. And kind of uncertain how it works. If I tab into it, you can see there's a lot going on under the hood, and I didn't really feel like dissecting it. But so you have your input node here, and you have your output node. So if I isolate this top half, which is his node setup, you get something that looks like this. So if I jump back into the 3D viewport here and move around our light, you can see it's a very flat texture. It doesn't interact with light. It doesn't receive light. It doesn't receive shadows. It's very flat, which may be what you're going for. And his original shader approach was more like baking in shadows or baking in ambient occlusion to get that shading. But I didn't want to do that. And I wanted to work with moving lights. So what I did is added this second half node setup, which if you know anything about PBR setups, this is just a real quick and dirty PBR setup. I have my color data input here, and I ran that through a color ramp. If I isolate that, I always like to run things through color ramps. With this setup, you can add more colors, make things crazy, fine tune it a little bit more. That looks ugly, so I'm going to delete it. And then run this node into base color. Go back up to our color data, run it through another color ramp, this time turning it grayscale to use that as roughness. I probably wouldn't want the values to be so extreme here, black and white. I'd probably lean a little bit. Well, it depends upon how shiny you want the paint to be, but I just left it as black and white. And then color data again through another color ramp, and this time to a bump node. This will help add height to the brush strokes. You can really easily overdo it, so I normally keep bump very low and then plug that into normal. It's all inside of a principled shader. And then when you mix the two shaders together, the further this is to the right, the more it references my shader. The further it is to the left, the more it references his original shader. I normally kept this a little bit higher. So if we go into our 3D viewport and now move around the light, you can see it receives light, cast shadows. It's very lovely. And I still get to keep those lovely brushstroke patterns from the node setup he made. I changed this amount depending on what object was being used at what time, just whatever happened to look better. But yeah, that's the shader setup. I use this setup for almost everything in the scene, except for the bunnies. I did do some hand-painted textures for them. But now, any questions? Okay, cool. Let's move on to more outlines. So this first or next method of outlines is I just rendered this out in cycles, our basic scene here, added an adjustment layer, and used the Universe Sketchify effect, which is a paid plugin through Red Giant. But it can get you results really quickly out of the box. If we zoom into Suzanne here, we can change the ink intensity, texture amount. Well, I don't have a texture on there, but you can add different textures. This also allows you to smooth color in between to add a little bit of a watercolor effect. So it might be hard to see, but it can add a smoothing effect. And a great thing about this is it does have a whole bunch of built-in presets, if they ever load, but they are there. Yeah. So with this, you can tweak this for quite a while, but you will still end up, a lot of times in my experience, with this very muddy result, which could be okay for a still image, but especially for an animation, it gets flickery and muddy really quick. So I didn't use this method so much. Instead, I built my own version of this. We're in a different comp now. Again, just the same base image. Made a pre-comp. And instead of using the Sketchify effect, I used the Find Edges effect, which adds this rainbow barf pattern. But you can see we get a very similar muddy result. Basically what this is doing is just looking for areas of high contrast and applying an edge to it. And then, so if we don't want rainbow barf, we add hue saturation, get rid of all the color. And then the most important part is the levels effect, where we can crunch it and really get rid of all of that muddiness. So that's, if we bring our white level up, it disappears. And boosting the black lines as well just makes it much more prominent, like it's supposed to be there. Now, it's important to note with this method, if I zoom into this chrome sphere here, it will outline specular highlights that may or may not be something you want. I don't know. It will also outline, let's see here, outline shadows, which again, may or may not be something that you want. Just be aware that it does that. But what I really liked is that it added outlines to the edges of these brush strokes. I really like that technique. And since I was using the shader everywhere, it worked perfectly. So then if we go back into our main comp, set our pre-comp to multiply, not color, but multiply blend mode, and voila, you get something very nice and you avoid those muddy details. This is the method I ended up using. But I have another method for outlines I'd like to share with you. This method I learned later on a different project. This one, I had a lot of geometry with a lot of different surfaces. So I thought, okay, let's use an ambient occlusion pass instead to create outlines. They aren't really outlines, but if you don't know what ambient occlusion is, that is shadows cast by ambient light. So they occur around edges of corners where things are just naturally around edges and folds. It's just darker there. So everywhere that's white in this image shows where the ambient occlusion is. Took this render, brought it into After Effects, used the levels effect, crunched everything just like in the previous method. So now I had really sharp, crisp lines. I must have also inverted this too, made the black white and the white black because I wanted black outlines. This is the original color image without the outlines. So then when you apply the ambient occlusion pass, you get these lovely outlines. And since it's crunched, it looks more stylized than just a regular ambient occlusion pass. I just think it really helped define the geometry. Here's another example in that same project. Lots of geometry, crunched the pass, original image without ambient occlusion, with ambient occlusion. Now, as with everything, there is a downside. When you're working with transparency, the ambient occlusion just goes right through it. Like, this doesn't make sense, but the lines go right through it. And same with this transparent emission shader, the lines cut right through it. So you'd have to render out another matte on top to mask it out, which in the final, I don't think I actually did for the glass, but I did for this emission flare though. Now I think I'm all done with outlines.
I expect after this, every Nice Moves community member only creates outline animation, okay?
It's like, there's so many methods.
Yeah, next edit, yeah, outlines.
I will say the ambient occlusion method wouldn't really work with the bunny animation because there's a lot of flat, gradual, rounded surfaces. You really need the sharp geometry for that to work. Let's see, lighting. Okay, this is a top-down view of my Blender scene. Right here is where a character is standing. The camera is looking this way. And these orange lines are the lights in the scene. So the majority of my light is coming from the front to create this very flat, even looking tone, making sure you can see everything in the scene. And this is the lighting setup I used for the beauty pass. But since I knew I wanted to be a little bit more stylized, referencing more traditional animation or anime, where you have this hard line that accentuates geometry, like a side light. I knew I couldn't use this lighting setup to achieve that. So I created a second lighting setup. This time where the lights are coming in from the side to give this very harsh angle to accentuate the geometry. Then using this second lighting setup, I rendered out a glossy diffuse pass. Again, crunched it with levels to give it a hard edge. And then this is the original flat light. And then when you add the edge light, you get something that actually has more definition to it. This is just using an adjustment layer inside of After Effects. And it's important to remember when working with post adjustments on colors like this, normally you want your highlights to be a little bit warmer. So boost the warmer tones in your curves and lower the cooler colors a bit, just so it doesn't look so flat. I did a similar thing for the shadows as well. Rendered out a shadow pass, crunched it, original, and then with shadows. This is a bit more subtle because I didn't want to go too dark. But again, I made the blue tones more prominent in the shadows. Yeah, that's the basis for the lighting. Yeah, that's mostly it for this project. But I will say, I'm really glad I did this because I learned so many different techniques. And these techniques I can easily see were carried over into other projects that I did, and especially into client work. Like for this project, big things I learned: brushstroke, textures, outlines, dip my toe barely into AI generation. And then this next project I did, if we have time to show it.
Can you show the finished product?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Thank you. Yeah. What was I saying? Yeah, I learned a lot. And I can easily see how these techniques carried over into my next project, which I think we have time to show it.
Hey, wake up. I've got another joke for you. Why couldn't the humans breathe? Ever. Get it? Oh, the humans would have laughed.
Yep, that's my humor. So like this one, Carrot, thank you. Carrying over the idea of the brush strokes, the outlines, this one utilized AI a lot more, running my animation through Stable Diffusion, which is even have better techniques for that now. But then all that experimentation with AI led me then to this project. Which was also for Clinton Jones's Endless Engines contest as well. Yes, it did. Those poor people.
Was it a boat? Or was it
That was the fish boat that I talked about in the very beginning. Is it a boat? Is it a fish? I don't know. In my head, it was like this boat that got cursed somehow, and now now it has to devour its fellow sailors. Yeah, by luring them in.
Anna, can you talk a little bit about how you use AI for that one?
Oh, sure. So for this one, I don't have any files to show you, but I created everything in Blender. I realized that I had to light everything very flat. And then I rendered everything out in an individual pass. The water is one pass, the boat is one pass, the other boat is another pass, the rowboat is another pass. And then I ran those image sequences through Stable Diffusion to apply a more stylized effect to it. Simplify it a little bit more. And there is a process to help avoid flickering. I know if any of you have seen the Rock, Paper, Scissors anime by Corridor Digital. Yeah, I was planning to do this method before that video came out, and then it was like, I didn't know anything about the anti-flicker in Resolve, I think, which I didn't end up using, but yeah, it's really cool. I use different prompts for each image sequence. The hardest part actually is that Stable Diffusion and other AI models, as far as I know, are only trained on 3 channels, so they don't have an alpha channel, which is a real pain. So I would send my sequences and put them on a white background, or sometimes I would even do a green screen background, and then matte them out using mattes that I'd also rendered in Blender. So compositing it was a little bit of a challenge. I did a very low res water sim because I was running out of time for this splash. But to augment it a bit, I just got some stock footage of a water splash and put that on top of my render. And then AI was able to add more detail to that. So it's a lot of compositing to make this work. Yeah, I don't know what else to talk about.
Was Air for like a short for something specific? Or?
Yep, again, it was another contest. That one was for Kitbash 3D's Mission to Minerva challenge. So that one, they actually gave you a whole bunch of free models. Yeah.
I mean, I have a question, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
No doubt, like, there are directions amazing, but storytelling wise, you know, how do you lay out your story?
I don't know. Sometimes it just jumps out at me. For this one in particular, it was called Endless Engines. And the template provided showcased a whole bunch of vehicles. But I went, oh my goodness, everyone's going to do a vehicle. I don't want to do a vehicle. So right away, I knew I didn't want to do a vehicle. I really like fish. I really like the ocean. So, okay, let's try and do a fish theme. I don't know. I had the idea of this fish luring sailors. But I thought, okay, maybe it had a lighthouse on its back, but a lighthouse isn't really an engine or a vehicle. So let's change it to a boat. No, that's just some of my thought process. I don't know if I really had I don't know.
Do you think you're going to be incorporating things like Stable Diffusion into a lot of your work moving forward? Or
I don't know how I can't. I don't know. I feel like you either have to integrate AI or die. I don't know, as good or bad as that is, I don't want to go all philosophical. I don't want AI to completely take over the workflow. I want to integrate it like here. I know a lot of people are applying AI filters on top of live action footage, but I don't shoot live action footage. I work in 3D, so let's try applying AI to 3D. And I just really enjoyed the ability to create stylized water, which would take forever to make otherwise. And it just opens up so many avenues. And yeah, I really enjoy it.
as a 2D animator, I am both impressed and afraid.
I know. It's like one day I'm super excited and optimistic about the future. The next I'm terrified. Yeah.
It seems like if we can use it to leverage and multiply what we can do rather than like, I mean, yeah, there's grounds for fear, but like I think that's the right approach.
Yeah. It's like, and it changes every week too. So it's like, whoa, what's new today?
I do want to clarify, are there parts of your talk you want to get through before going?
No, this is the end. This is the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, and if any questions pop up in the chat, I can read them out to you.
Okay, cool.
What was the turnaround time for applying the various passes through AI?
Yeah, each pass took about 50 minutes. So I was running it locally on my 3080 Ti. So it did actually take longer. I rendered this out in Eevee, which is another great thing about the AI filter approach. You don't have to have super high quality and render samples. See, if you do have noise in your image, it does know. So even if you run it through a denoiser in Blender, as soon as you get rid of that noise, you get much nicer results. It just doesn't have to be super high quality. Yeah.
So for the AI, the water
Mhm.
used the AI sort of technique that you did.
Yeah.
Did you sort of tell it to do the sort of Hokusai, whatever, great wave kind of thing, or did it do that by itself?
You know what? Let me see here. If I go
The
to,
minute the page came up, that's what I thought of. It was just the colors of the blues and the whites and the shapes of the waves.
if I just, I did have some detail to the ocean, to the water, as you can see here. I did have detail there, but it's pretty low res. And then I took the render here, which has the correct colors. That's also really important. Make sure your colors are what you want. But as far as the prompts go, I find when you're using an image-to-image prompt, you want to keep your prompts fairly simple because you already have most of the data that you need right there. I think just using words like illustration, I think in this one, I was looking a lot of reference of like 15th century medieval maps and the sea monster type thing. So I was using that type of language for the prompts.
Is anybody else picking up on the water the way I was? Okay.
Did I not answer your question?
Well, sort of. Well, yeah, you didn't ask for it explicitly.
Yeah.
It went out and said, oh, I'm doing waves, and these are the colors she wants. So I'm gonna go, what's the other word for steel? I'm gonna go grab the Hokusai stuff and reference.
Reference.
Well, okay, it was Xerox. Yeah, and by the way, it's quite cool. It looks great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool what it can do.
It really works. I'm guessing that's you liked it.
Yeah, well, that's what I submitted.
Yeah, no, it looks great. And if you were sitting doing it by yourself and you said, what do I want the waves to look like? When I'm sitting there tweaking my shaders.
Yeah.
You showed us, you had a better name for it, your little mood boards and all the pictures you have and stuff. I would totally expect if you showed me the reference board for this, there's a picture of the Great Wave, in front of Fuji sitting there. Because that's, what I think of when I think of stylized water.
Yeah, AI has this.
It's different than the computer doing it than you doing it. It's really cool.
Yeah, the amount of interpretive power the AI has is ridiculous. Like it adds.
The wave in front of the other ship, that looks like it's just sort of cut out of that painting, and that's just great. I mean, with the black lines and the blue, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
Except it's moving as little waves. I mean, it's something totally different. It's neat.
That would be so pretty badass, right? There's super well composite, like the light. I mean, if you didn't know it was supposed to be with AI.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that the whole conversation of the AI is you could have just as easily, well, not easily, gone in and why would you spend that time when the AI knows how to do it?
It also allows you to iterate really quickly. For instance, the AI respects that I had a light blue highlight here.
Right.
It respects the lightning flashes. It understands that, okay, this is bright now. And so you can quickly change it.
Working, but to me, it says, it looked at that and said, oh, I've got to go out and look for some water that's got some of this kind of flat pastel blue in it with these really cool highlights mixed across it. And that's what it came up with, just like you might have if you were like paging through whatever people page through now.
Can you go back to the Instagram?
Yeah.
think that what's important when you look at something like this, right, is like, there's still, if you look at the middle one, right, there's still like all the decisions there, right? And it's like, you know, no one looks at the, like, the ocean shade or the ocean deform or whatever you want to call it in Blender and say like, well, why didn't you go in and like move all the vertices to create like every waveform, right? Everyone's like, can I just get the wave deformer or the wave shader and let it do waves, right? Like we don't want to be bogged down by that. We want to choose like, you know, how does it move? Where does the lighting come from? Like the more like the director style decisions, more so than every individual vertex being moved in every single pixel.
So, okay, we're getting into some weeds here. Is it okay?
Hey, I was gonna say, I do think we should actually ask you.
I can definitely talk about this afterwards if you want to.
Yes, we could totally have an AI open forum after the talk.
I didn't bring it
It's
up.
a hot topic right now.
Yeah, you're great questions. I wanted to know these things as well. I actually did have a question
Yes.
about how do you schedule in these personal projects around client work? How do you balance feeding yourself and also making things for yourself?
Well, client work always comes first. Like it just has to, you know, that's the most important thing. And I'm able to justify personal projects because I know the techniques I use here, I'll use later. Like I didn't know how to use Marvelous Designer before this project, but now I do. And then right afterwards, I had a project for Marvelous Designer. So it's easy for me to justify spending the time working on it.
So to make that guy happier, can you talk a little bit more about yourself and Fractal Orange and stuff?
Sure.
I'm coming in very ignorant. Somebody kind of like dropped the ball on the introduction.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by it, and I understand you're in Fargo.
Yeah, so quick backstory. I went to MSU Moorhead, graduated with a degree in graphic communications. After graduation, I lived in Fort Worth, Texas, worked for a production company called Serendipitous Films. Half my job was this stuff, and the other half was filming on location and video production work. After that, I am so homesick. I want to move to Fargo. Wait, I can make my own animation industry in Fargo by becoming a freelancer. But I moved to the cities instead of Fargo because I thought, okay, I still need to live in the cities to get clientele. Minneapolis, St. Paul is the closest cities to Fargo. So I lived here for about 7 months, met the Nice Moves community, and then still wasn't close enough to home, so I moved back to Fargo. I have been freelancing full-time now under Fractal Orange for 4 years now. It'll be 4 years in May. So if you want to hire me.
Can you talk about any of your commercial work? Everything you've sort of shown us has been sort of more or less a personal piece, right?
Because they're so fun.
I know, I totally get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to show us, just can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, like
because maybe it's secret.
Fortunately I don't have a lot of NDA stuff, so that's good. Yeah, I market myself as a 2D and 3D motion graphics designer. So I like to be very broad. Don't like being stuck doing one thing so often. But I'll do, you know, the basic corporate explainer videos, end of year review videos. I'll do 3D product demos, like here's our air filter and here's all the little molecules moving through the air filter. My favorite things to work on are title sequences. Those are very few and far between, but I love working on those.
What's an example of that for
when I was working in Fort Worth, I did a lot of stuff for Ride TV, which is a TV channel based around the equestrian lifestyle.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I've done some sequences for EWTN, which is another TV network.
So actual title sequences. Like
actual title sequences, yep.
Cool.
I don't know. What else to really say?
Yeah.
I like what I do.
Have any of your entries been selected?
In the very beginning for the Kit Bash 3D contest, when they were just starting out, I got third place, I think, in the first contest they ever did. I don't know, there were, like 20 people, I don't know. It was really small then, but now they have thousands and thousands of people. I'm like, oh, bummer. But yeah, I did get third place. I'm proud of that.
We don't have to know the numbers. We celebrate you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Can I just say on that piece, those clouds are sick. I love the clouds and the boat in the sea.
Yeah.
I love that. It's such a great design. It's like,
How did I make those? I'm like trying to remember. It's like, oh, yeah. So those were made, I grabbed a stock photo of clouds. And originally it was an animated video of clouds. And I ran that video through Stable Diffusion, but the clouds were so amorphous, it actually added a lot of jitter to the render, which I just didn't like. And I was struggling over that. I was rendering Stable Diffusion Pass after Stable Diffusion Pass on this. It just wasn't good. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I have turbulent displace. So this is just a still frame. There are actually 2 levels of clouds, but a still frame with a couple passes of turbulent displace on top of it.
Can you hit play again?
Yeah. And they don't need to move super much because it'll be distracting otherwise.
But the fact that they do move a little bit is their eyes drawn.
I mean, just about the composition of the frame that your eyes are going all the way up there.
Yeah, but you're subconsciously, you're sitting there going,
Yeah.
you're accepting the motion of it. It's adding to the excitement.
Very much a side note. Do you also do the sounds for this one?
Yep.
How do you? Because you can hear like the fish boat like hum. It's like
Yeah. I use Audition for the sounds, and I just use stock sound effects from Envato.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and piece it together. I really don't know much about sound design. Never took a class in it or anything, but I find it's really helpful to mess with the left and right panning to give the impression of it's moving across the scene.
What was the site you mentioned?
Envato. I have an Envato Elements account.
It's great. I have it too. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. It has stock photos, stock video, which the video for the sky came from Envato as well. Yeah.
Back to Fractal Orange, like this might be like a deeper question and not so much like about the
Shoot, I'll do my best.
of the art question, but like you hinted at you wanted to build your own like kind of scene in Fargo with animation and motion graphics and stuff. Is that like still your goal, or are your goals changing, or like where do you see?
Well, I guess when I say build my own industry is that, Fargo doesn't really have a strong motion graphics industry, animation industry, film industry, anything arts industry. Yeah. So being able to work remotely just gave me that opportunity to live where I want and do what I love. Mm-hmm. But as far as building an industry, I don't see myself like hiring employees. I don't know. I said I'd never go freelance, and here I am. But yeah.
Do you ever collaborate with somebody locally?
Yes. Occasionally, if I'm overworked, I'll subcontract. And that's been really great.
Yeah. Could you talk a little more about that transition from, living in the cities for a little bit and then, wanting to be closer to home and freelancing for that first year?
So I will say, like, freelancing or having my own business is something I never wanted to do. My dad and my grandparents have their own businesses, and I saw the amount of stress they were under all the time, and I went, I will never do that. So when I lived in Fort Worth, we actually hired freelancers all the time. It was the first time I got introduced to that type of work and lifestyle, and I went, I don't know about this. But then somehow I got a hold of the School of Motion book, the Freelance Manifesto, changed my life. I thought, okay, this is something I can actually do. I don't know if it's called the Freelance Manifesto or the Freelancer's Manifesto. Yeah, by School of Motion. I read that book, took it to heart, and went, this is possible. I can do this. And I had more than enough in savings to allow me to make that risk, take that jump. And it also helped. I was able to continue working freelance for my former employer, keeping that good relationship going. And then I just started sending out cold emails to people and got work. And yeah, it's been going well ever since. I'm very blessed to have not had a very hard go of it at all. Yeah.
Why Fractal Orange?
Well, fractals, turbulent displays. Got to use those fractals in everything. You know, you use fractals, turbulent displays, rough and edges, fractal patterns for procedurally generated materials. Like, I love fractals, noise patterns, and procedural stuff. And then orange, I don't know. Have you ever noticed that a lot of companies just have weird names? Yeah. Like, I want to have a weird name too. So it's got a fractal orange. That's good. I always think of it as the color, not the fruit. I don't know. Someone always like, oh, the orange, like the fruit. Like, I never thought about it that way. But I never liked the color orange. I'm just gonna leave it like that. I never liked that color. It was always my least favorite color. I'm getting to my change of heart here. Don't worry. But it goes along with deciding to go freelance. That this was such a new experience for me. Like, I'd only been working in the industry for 2 years. And like orange, that's a bright, adventurous, spontaneous color. And I just felt like that. Like, okay, orange. I'm going to go with orange. I'm going to be adventurous and spontaneous. And I'm just going to take it in stride. I don't know. I guess that's kind of a wishy-washy artistic way of interpreting things. But yeah, Fractal Orange. Yeah. Thank you. Orange has now become one of my favorite colors.
Is it one of your favorite fruits?
You know, oranges are pretty good, but I think I like strawberries more now that I think about it. I like strawberries.
Well, yeah, I'll have to have you replace me as events committee chair since you're so passionate about the